Okay. Well, good morning, Theresa. Thanks so much for joining
Honestly,
me.
it's good.
Yeah, but it's really so good to have connected with you and to hear a bit about the journey that God's walked with you. And if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about yourself, and also just about the journey that God's been taking you on for the last couple of years.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity first, just to share, and also to reconnect with you after the days of our military service together. It is good to reconnect on a spiritual level and be able to speak to one another about, I think, more important things than the military. Just to give a quick introduction. Yes, I'm Theresa. I live, unfortunately, not in South Africa at the moment, but coming back soon. I live with my husband, and our two children are also studying abroad. Our daughter is in Spain studying, and then our son is back in South Africa completing his last 2 years of school. And for us, the journey, the last 2 years, almost 3 years, has been a challenging one, but also a very rewarding one. I recall in December 2001, it was and if I say this in Afrikaans, it will maybe have a bigger impact. A Wes-Transvaalse donderstorm. We had a magnificent thunderstorm in the Western Transvaal or Northwest Province, and I was lying in my bed that evening, and at first just appreciating the storm, and then secondly, it started to become, but what if I can't travel back home tomorrow because of this storm? And together with that panic of I might not be able to travel and be back with my husband, I also realized that I've got this throbbing pain in my right breast. And I knew there was something forming for a while. And my husband also told me, you must have this checked. And I kind of always put it at the back, there's something else to do. There's other things that must happen. And that night, I realized, what if the storm prevents me from getting back home? But what if whatever's happening in my breast prevents me from also getting back home in a different sense, though? And yes, all went well. I traveled back, and I got back, and I had myself checked. And the process of going to the doctor, I think, is a daunting one. That first steps, you have to acknowledge that there's something wrong. And that to me was difficult. And then, yes, I saw the first doctor, I saw the second doctor, and eventually a friend intervened and said, you can't be waiting for results this long. It was then almost 2 months that I still hadn't had a diagnosis of what they were suspecting that is happening in my breast. And I eventually got to a doctor that looked at it. I had a biopsy within 2 days, and it was confirmed. It's breast cancer. I think knowing it in the back of your mind, you are expecting that's not going to be a good diagnosis, but then hearing it, it really hits you. Hearing it for the first time when somebody says those words to you was heartbreaking. And then, yes, then the first couple of minutes from it sinking in, it's like, no, Lord, maybe it's a misdiagnosis. And then, just having faith that it will be turned around. What they saw is not malignant. The biopsy will come back all clean. But then it doesn't. It comes back and they tell you it's stage 3. And then you deal with the emotion, the questions, the rebellion within me. Why? Yes, and then it's not an easy road. It's a road that affects not only me, it affects my immediate family. It affects my friends. It affects the family that aren't living with me as well. And we started our the first cancer treatment started in 2022 of March. And I completed chemo, which wasn't the nicest of treatments to have. I guess nicest of treatments to have is putting it mildly. And then radiation, and that after the radiation, or mastectomy and then the radiation, January 2023, I finished the radiation part. And then one thing you finished, but then it's all not finished. You still have the emotional rollover. There's still a lot of healing that has to take place, not only in your physical body, but also in what you are going through as a person, in what you feel has been lost in a year or 2 years prior to that. It's an ongoing healing process, which you can only trust God for. There's no other way. And if God isn't there for you, what are you holding on to? So I really found my refuge in God. I found that after the first week when I was diagnosed, I really cried out to the Lord, and I think it's natural. And some days I got a bit rebellious, and I asked him, why me? And I remember so clearly, he gave me the verse in 2 Kings 20, verse 5. And just that reassurance where it says, I've heard your cries and I will heal you. And it also came with confirmation of people that prayed for me and told me, Theresa, we feel that this is not going to be your end. This is a beginning. And I remember how touched I was that God not only spoke to me through that verse, but he also spoke to different people to confirm what I'm hearing. And in that moment, week 1 after being diagnosed, I knew this is not going to be my end, but I knew it's going to be the beginning of a long road. It's a road that's painful physically and emotionally, but a road that caused spiritual growth, a road that caused immense growth in terms of courage and intimacy with Christ. I can still reflect back and I can still feel healing and strengthening happening in my body. It's not over. It's still happening, and I can thank God only for that, for a family that has supported me, a husband that's been my rock and he is my strength through difficult days when I've been difficult. Let's be honest. A cancer patient is not an easy patient. And yes, and just the hope that whatever God is taking me through, he's taking me through. He's not letting me go on my own. Another psalm I held on to deeply is Psalm 23. I remember reciting that because maybe it was the only one that I could recite by heart when the first chemo fluid flowed into my veins. And I just remember the words, in the valley in the shadow of death. And I thought, oh, Lord, this is a dark valley I'm going into. And just that feeling that you have when that medicine reaches your veins, and it kind of, you feel it. And I just realized, but God is there. The Holy Spirit is in that room with me, in that cubicle where I'm receiving this treatment. Some people might argue it's not healing because it's coming through medical professions. But I felt that God was taking me that road to be a strength for other people, but also showing me his healing through what he has created and what he has enabled people to do. Passage that took me back time and time again just to his faithfulness, his love, his standing with me. That is what really encouraged me. There are other text verses as well, of course, but I want to say the one in Kings and Psalm 23 was key, was instrumental for me to hold on to. And yes, here I am, still healing, but here I am to tell of God's greatness and God's goodness, and to be of hope and encouragement for anybody that's walking through the similar or even something different, but also needs hope and needs encouragement.
It's so natural as when something does come along that we didn't expect and we maybe didn't want, to go back to God and say, but why me? You know, I loved you for so long and I've served you and I've not been bad, but why me? Why do you put me? So how did you get over that? And what was God's answer for you there?
Mariska, I asked God, why me? And I think in my mind, I was standing in front of him with bold fists and, you know, kind of like a little tantrum, a girl throwing a tantrum in front of her father. And I didn't get an answer at first when I asked God, why me? Why me? Because why me also meant, why my family? Why must they also suffer alongside this? And then I remember one evening when I was praying, I realized and I spoke the words, why not me? And I didn't know where that came from. It was like it was an automatic response, kind of just a verbal words that came out. And I realized, why not me? Exactly, God, why not me? And if it is, God did not give cancer for sure. But if he's using this to be instrumental in his kingdom, why not me? And that's how I got from why me, God, to why not me, and almost to here I am, Lord. Use me. So I don't know exactly how the transition happened. I think it was a hard change. It was Holy Spirit just coming to minister into my deep thoughts, thoughts that you don't even want to think out loud. But that is where the shift came.
And you've mentioned a couple of times of your family now and how supportive your husband and your family has been. What was the impact on them? It must also have been really, really difficult for them. And how would they have coped with what you are going through and seeing you going through this?
We underestimate how difficult it is for family members to go through secondary as a bystander, go through any illness that you are facing. For me, my fight was stay healthy, keep going, make sure your immune system is strong. I had objectives to reach in terms of to make sure I can get through this, and spiritually as well. But there's a part of the fight that they couldn't fight. They could only see it. I want to make the analogy of a battleground. As I had to be on the battleground every morning. I had to stand in the front row. Because if I chose to step back and go and rest and not look after myself, it could be detrimental. They still had lives to live. They still had to go to work. They had to study. They had to go to school. But also still come back to the front line and stand next to me. And that back and forth, thinking of where they fit into society, what they have to do, and still be there for me in a time with which they see things happening to me, it's enormous. It is, I think, heart-wrenching to know that they were suffering just as I was suffering, maybe even more, because they were helpless in a sense to make a physical difference. But in the spiritual realm, they were my strength. They were the prayer support. They were the encouragement. They were those that spoke declarations of healing and hope over me at the times where I just wanted to go and sit and say, no, this is a bit, I'm tired now. Let me have a rest. So the impact on a family is immense. And I don't think we have enough support for those people alongside of us going through something. The patient gets the focus. But a lot of times we neglect focusing on the family that needs just as much support.
As a family, you serve God. What do you think, or can you even comprehend what the difference or the impact would have been if you didn't have God?
As much as I can try and imagine, and I see it maybe in when I go visit the cancer hospital, when I go for appointments, and I see people of another faith with faces that are hopeless, that are in dire need of just encouragement, just to know that it's going to be okay. I cannot imagine somebody going through this on their own or as a family unit, not having external hope to hold on to. And if I say external, God is not external. He's with us. So it's not, he's not distant in this whole process, but I can't imagine where your hope and strength comes from when you're going through this as a family member or as the patient. No, I honestly, I can't see how I would have come through this if God wasn't first and center for us.
Well, one other thing was, Theresa, is how did you deal with fear? The fear of the unknown, and maybe that's still a thing for you now.
As much as we tell somebody it's going to be okay, or you can tell somebody that's going through anything, don't worry, don't fear. Fear is normal, I think, But what you do with the fear, that makes a difference. And for me, Habakkuk 3, verses, I think it's 17 to 19, where he speaks about, it says, even if the fig tree doesn't blossom, and even if there's no crop on the field, and even if there's no cattle in the fold, I will still praise you. And that was fear. For me, fear was, what if the fig tree doesn't blossom? But after reading that, I realized, even if the fig tree doesn't blossom, God is still God. And so that helped me contextualize fear and say, even if this doesn't happen, or even if this is difficult, or even if I had to have, which I did, even if the mastectomy happens, even if, God is still God. And that turned my fear into hope, into a declaration of, even if, Lord, I will still praise you. And I want to say my song, or my lament of fear, turned into a song of praise. And in that, I found strength.
Your message be to someone going through something similar?
Surround yourself with positive people. Even people might not understand what you're dealing with, but people that remain positive, people that appreciate the day's heat and is positive about. You don't need nagging people around you still that will complain about the price of bread or something else that's just going to bog your mind down. So surround yourself, whatever you're going through, with positive people. Remember, life goes on around you. Whatever you are facing now, life goes on around you. So don't even stop being there for others, because you still need to contribute to your group of friends, your family, your society. And by doing that, while you are going through whatever you are walking through, you retain your sense of place, if I can put it that way, in society. And people will rally around you when they see you are taking a knock or things are difficult for you. And also to admit to yourself, there's that maybe cliche, it's okay not to be okay, but it's true. You don't always have to be okay, but you have to admit it to yourself. You have to be able to tell yourself, today I'm not okay. Today I'm struggling. What I'm facing today is not easy. You need to admit it to yourself first, because then you can emotionally deal with it. And you're not placing that burden on somebody else to deal with. So you have somebody alongside you helping you, yes, but you're not expecting somebody to deal with your emotions. And then maybe another thing, don't research too much. Google is great, but medically wise, maybe doesn't have all the answers, or the answers are overwhelming. So I chose not to research too much. I chose to only look at medical journals, and I didn't research them as much either. I relied on God putting the right people on my path to direct me, to give me advice, to say, okay, this should you do, or look at your health or your eating habits this way. And that's how I navigated the maze of information that's out there, because that can bog you down on its own. Keep doing what you love. So keep doing what you love. This is a significant part of my testimony as well. I chose not to stop my sport. So I'm not an avid horse rider or an avid equestrianist, but I do ride horse. I know which side to get up and fall off on. So I chose through this journey not to stop doing what I love. And I kept riding throughout this journey of being diagnosed, going through treatment, and coming out on the other side. And that was a great support for me, just to know my energy, my love, my passion is still lived out, no matter the body that's suffering. And it was even so significant that I broke my leg 10 days before I had my mastectomy. But God was great. God just took it and made it an experience beyond experiences, that even in that time, I think it was one of the biggest laughs my husband and I had in the hospital, because when I arrived at the hospital and he was with me, because he met me there, and he saw and he said, you were doing what you were doing, what you loved, you were doing life. So we took it on as that. It wasn't that I stopped living no matter what I was going through. I kept living, and even in the lashback of that, of falling off, breaking a leg, God still was there. And it became a wonderful moment, because I got to meet another hospital's medical personnel, which just was lovely, and also could see the journey, and could just see God in it. So that's my advice to those out there. Don't give up what you love. Be there for others, because it's not just you going through things, other people around you also going through things. So keep being there for others. Admit to yourself when you're not okay. Surround yourself with those positive people, and don't research too much.
The last thing I know, people are going to ask me if they listen to this is, are they able, if there's someone out there that wants to just make contact with you, are you open to that? Would you welcome that or not?
Yes, I would like to be there for somebody going through anything, not as a medical advice, not as I know it all, just as somebody to say, I'll be your positive friend on the other side of an email. And if I can bring God into your situation, that is what I want to do.
Theresa, thanks so much. We're so grateful that God brought you through this. I'm so grateful that God brought you almost back into my life. And we hope you and your family can return to the beautiful Western Cape sometime soon.
Thank you for being able to share God's love. It really means a lot. And thank you for your time also. Thank you for what you're doing, Mariska, in terms of reaching people. Thank you.